Loren, how did you first come up with the Theta Chamber?
That's a good question. Back in the early 80s, my wife and I, we had adopted two children with handicaps, one with cerebral palsy and one with Downs. And we adopted them as infants. And just like any other parent, it was everything we could do to make their life better, to give them a better quality of life. And in that quest to find out how we could do that, we came across very interesting and promising technologies that looked as if it would improve that type of handicap. And so we started experimenting with these. We bought different types of machines that would help. We did all sorts of diet. But in the end, we came up with 5 modalities that, if combined, would make a substantial difference in their quality of life. One of those, and probably the most important, is the vestibular. And that's where we spin you, where you lay down and you're enclosed in a capsule that spins. It doesn't spin very fast. It spins between 12 and 13 RPMs a minute, but that spinning, when you don't have anything outside to tell you that you're spinning, is very powerful in the way it controls things in our body, particularly our IQ and our motor skills. Dr. Clark at the Ohio University of Medicine had done several studies with Down syndrome children, putting them in a chair and having them blindfolded and spun for 30 minutes. And this spinning, at the end of their results, they found that there was a 27% improvement in their motor skills and 24% improvement in their IQ. So for parents of a Down syndrome child, this was very promising and exciting to us. The other one is the stimulation of the brain with light and sound. Now, there's lots of light and sound devices on the market. What makes this different is you want to use only white light. It encompasses the full spectrum of light, number one, and it's soothing to the eye. By flashing different frequencies of lights on the eyes and then having corresponding tones in the ears, you can actually get the two hemispheres of our brain, the analytical side and the creative side, to come into balance. And at that point in time, you can actually lower the brainwave activity into what we call theta, which is our dream state. When we go to bed at night and we dream, we're generally in theta. We were talking about the theta state, and when we go to sleep at night, when we dream, we have our vivid dreams. That's generally when we're in theta. That's when the body heals the best, is in the theta state. It's when we have our most inspirational moments of our sleep is during theta. And so at that point in time, our subconscious mind becomes very impressionable. The other aspect of the Theta Chamber is the cranial electrostimulation, and that has tremendous impact for those who have a substance abuse issue or behavioral issues, because what they're finding is in those situations, the brain chemistry is out of whack. For example, if an individual is addicted to cocaine, very soon into that addiction, his brain, or their brain, stop the normal production of dopamine and endorphin, two very important endorphins that make us feel good and normal, and it shuts it off. And it can take the brain up to 60 months, almost 5 years, to go back to normal production. So it's next to impossible to stop an addiction by just cold turkey or stop taking it, because you need those endorphins. And Dr. Margaret Patterson out of Scotland and Dr. Wen out of Hong Kong were working with the Vietnam vets back in the late 60s and early 70s who had become addicted to morphine from their injuries that they had sustained in battle. And they found that if they stimulated the brain with a small electrical current, they could get the normal brain production of dopamine and endorphin back into normal production in days rather than months or years. And so that was very powerful. Many of the musicians back in the 70s and 60s, Eric Clapton and Pete Townsend and Ted Nugent, and even in the late 80s, Boy George, were all treated by Dr. Margaret Patterson with cranial stimulation, and they'll all tell you that they owe their life to the cranial stimulation therapy that they received at her hand. And so that's a very important part. So when we're dealing with substance abuse, if we can actually trigger the parts of the brain that have shut down or somehow been retarded in the way that they're functioning, they're supposed to function, you make leaps and bounds of progress in dealing with an addiction or a substance abuse. Now, just like substance abuse, behavioral issues are treated the same in the brain in a lot of cases. Like pornography addiction triggers the same receptors in the brain as heroin. And so you can deal with those addictions in much the same ways electronically as if it was a substance abuse. Now obviously the counseling side would be totally different, but the way it's treated in the machine would be much like a substance abuse. In addition to those main modalities, inside the theta chamber you're laying down on a pad of electromagnetic coils that pulse in such a way that it helps improve the circulation so that you get better blood flow throughout your body. And then of course the centrifugal motion of the spin is pushing that blood to your extremities, your toes, your fingers, and in our case more importantly the brain. So we get a higher concentration of oxygen-rich blood into the brain, which makes things even better. And then with that we add music and we add sound and we add affirmations that you can listen to while you're in that state of relaxation and a higher awareness. On the safety side of the theta chamber we have a vitals monitor, an EEG system that reads the brainwave activity so that we're monitoring the health and the condition of you and your body as you're going through that process to make sure it's comfortable and safe the whole time. So in a nutshell, that's how it started and that's what it has become. That's the theta chamber.